Hello and welcome. Thank you for clicking on the video PowerPoints for Chapter 3, Welding Joints, Positions, and its Symbols. This video is interactive with the PowerPoints from your modern welding textbook. This chapter gives you a lot of information. Textbook, Welding Joints, Positions, and Symbols. This is one of the largest chapters in the book. There's a lot of information throughout the chapter. Not all of it you'll use in this course, but you definitely will use it all throughout your time here at Hack. 3. Welding Joints, Positions, and Symbols. The learning objectives for this chapter are to identify the 5 basic weld joints, list and describe the 4 welding positions, identify and describe the 5 weld joint designs that may be used in each of the 4 welding positions, identify the parts or areas of a groove weld and a butt joint and fillet weld. Understand basic welding terminology, identify the basic types of welds as indicated by the welding symbols used on the ANSI AWS complete welding symbol, locate and apply required weld and joint information from an AWS welding symbol. In this course, we won't deal a lot with welding symbols past this chapter. I'll try to get our prints for our projects made up, so you'll have to read them then. But you're going to get a lot more and in-depth about welding symbols in, of course, Weld 101. Basic weld joints. A welder should understand the type and location of welds needed by reading the welding symbols. A weld joint refers to how the parts are assembled prior to the welding. The item to be joined is a base metal or base material if there is no metal involved. The 5 basic weld joints: butt, lap, corner, T, and edge. Butt joints are used when parts are joined edge to edge. Edge preparation refers to how the edges are shaped prior to welding. So if you're going to clean the material, bevel it, grind an edge on it, that would be considered any edge preparation. Materials under 3/16 in thickness do not need any additional preparation. That's key for this course. We'll be using a lot of 1/8" material, so that the thinness of the material, we won't need to put any edge preparation on it. A groove weld is made by fusing molten filler metal into a butt joint. That's very key. Any groove weld, if any butt joint, you're going to have a groove weld to fill it. All right, let's look at the parts of a groove joint. If we kind of start from the inside out, we start the distance or the space between our 2 pieces of base metal is called our root opening. After that, if you look at the bevel that's on our base metals, that is called the groove face. That angle, degree angle of your bevel, is called your bevel angle. The distance between both bevels, which in this case it looks like 30 degrees here and 30 degrees here, would be your groove angle, would be a 60-degree groove angle. And obviously, your filler rod or your electrode is what's going into your butt joint. The root face would be the distance from the top of your weld to the actual bottom of your weld. Terms used to describe a completed groove weld. If we start from the inside out, we have our weld root, which covers our root opening. The distance from the base metal to our bottom of our weld root is called our root reinforcement. The distance from the top of the base metal to the bottom of the base metal is considered our weld bead. Our edges of our weld are considered our weld toes. The contour of our weld bead is our weld face from toe to toe. And the distance from the top of the base metal to our top of our weld face would be our weld reinforcement. The hole distance overall from our weld face to our weld root is called our joint penetration. I know this is a lot of information on the last two slides, but again, just take it from inside out when you're looking at the terms for a completed groove weld. Lap joint and corner joint. A lap joint is formed by two overlapping pieces of base metal. A corner joint is formed by placing two pieces of base metal perpendicular or at an angle to one another. Inside corner joints are welded along the inside of the joint, and then obviously outside corner joints are welded along the outside edge. The outside corner joint is an easy weld to make. Anything that has a 90-degree angle to it, usually you have an outside corner joint. Very, very easy to weld, and it's also a pretty weld too. T-joints, the most common joint I would say, a T-joint is formed by two pieces of base metal that are at an angle of approximately 90 degrees. So they're forming this T. The edges may be prepared as a square bevel groove, J groove, or flare bevel groove. Obviously for this course, if we do get into T-joints, we'll be doing them just with the square groove. An edge joint is formed when the surfaces of the two pieces are in contact and their edges are even. We had a picture or illustration on the first slide of an edge joint. A flange joint is formed when the edge of one or more pieces is bent to form a flange. That would be really like the sixth joint. There's really only called 5 basic weld joints. So there are 5 basic weld joints: butt, lap, T, edge, and corner. The slides also say maybe a 6th joint would be a flanged, flare-edged joint. So we're moving right along here. We have our 5 basic weld joints. Now we're going into types of welds. A weld is a fused joint between 2 or more pieces of metal or non-metal. Fillet welds are made at an intersection of a surface and an edge or in a corner where 2 surfaces meet. A groove weld is made in a groove or gap between 2 pieces of metal. Here are the parts of a fillet weld in their 3 primary dimensions. If we start from inside out, we look at our weld root. The distance from our weld root to our weld toe is called our weld leg. The distance from weld toe to weld toe is our weld size. This 90-degree angle look, which we're going to want with every weld we make, is called an effective throat. Bead welds and weld passes. A weld bead is one weld pass of filler metal that is added to a weld joint. The first weld pass is called the root pass. Subsequent weld passes are intermediate passes. The final pass is a cover pass. Generally, a weld bead should not be thicker than 1/4 inch. So that means one leg of your weld should be 1/4 inch one way and 1/4 inch of your other leg weld, making that 90-degree triangle, right triangle. Pass was always your root pass. The second pass was typically called a hot pass. We didn't have your intermediate passes were after would be your 3rd pass, 4th pass, whatever. And then we would finish off with what they call a cap. So if we're in the shop and we're running multiple passes, which we probably won't for weld 1 or 2, but you would definitely throughout your time here at Hack, you'll hear me say root pass, hot pass, then maybe intermediate passes, and then finally your cover pass or multiple cover passes. Usually it was referred to as a hot pass because welders would actually turn up their heat after running the root pass. Typically your root pass should run a little bit colder, especially if it's open.